Okay, so here's a lesson on how to load film into a 35mm manual camera. We've got a roll of film here, in this case a dummy roll of film. It's not a real one, but it looks just like the real thing. And a quick bit of information about the film again. This portion of it is called the canister or the cassette. It has a spool inside here that turns, and that's what the camera uses to advance or bring back the film into the canister when it's been exposed. This portion of the film that hangs out here we call the leader. Some people will call it the tail of the film as well. Okay? These holes in the film right here are known as the sprocket holes in the film, and the camera will have teeth that engage in those sprocket holes to advance it. I'm going to show you how to load a couple of different cameras here because cameras are a little bit different depending on whether or not they have a motor drive installed. This is a fully manual camera that does not have a motor drive, so we'll start with this one. The first thing we're going to need to do is open up the back of the camera to access the film chamber. Again, different cameras will have different mechanisms for that. Some cameras will have a release lever toward here that we can use to open up the back. Quite often cameras will use the film rewind lever here as part of the mechanism to open up the film chamber. So I'm going to pull up on that lever, and if I give it one more gentle tug, a spring release will engage and the back of the camera opens up. Okay. We've got the film chamber over here where the film canister is going to go. The film is going to be stretched across the shutter of the camera, which is here. Quick tip as well, the shutter mechanism, the leaves of the shutter are extremely thin and delicate. You don't want to touch that area at any time. The film will transport along these two little rails along the side here, and the leader of the film we need to tuck into this side here for the advancing the film, okay, the take-up spool. So essentially what happens here, and the typical convention is that you put the canister, and the canister only fits in one way. The canister goes into the camera with the film stretched across. Okay? And again, different cameras will have different mechanisms on the take-up spool for attaching the film. In this case, might be a little bit difficult to see, but we have almost a series of little nylon rods here. And the idea is that the leader of the film tucks inside and gets caught in those little nylon leaders, and that's what will help to advance the film. Okay? There are also a couple of little sprocket teeth here that are going to engage through the sprocket holes in the film, and that will help to advance the film as well. So I'm going to tuck the leader of the film into that sprocket area. Now before I close the back of the camera, I don't want to leave the film sort of bunched up and puffed up like this. I want to take up a little bit of that slack, and to do that I'm going to push down the rewind lever and just gently rewind the film back into the canister. I don't want to pull it right off the end, but I just want to put a little bit of tension there so that the film is held fairly flat. Okay? As soon as I've done that, and I can tell it looks like it's engaged here, I might even feel to see if I can feel the teeth coming through the sprocket holes, then I can close the camera back. Okay? And now I'm ready to advance the film to the first frame. Recall here that there is film now that's been exposed that's sitting there. We don't want to start taking pictures immediately because those pictures would simply come out black. The film's already exposed. We need to advance the film ahead until we see the number 1 appear on the film counter here. So to advance the film, I can simply press the shutter button to release the shutter, advance the film, press it again, advance the film, and I'm watching here as I'm advancing as well. I should see this take up the rewind mechanism here. I should see that moving as I'm advancing the film. Okay. And I'm looking to see until the number 1 appears in the counter, and now I know I have fresh film exposed here and I'm ready to take a picture. Okay. Let's assume for a moment that we have taken all of the frames that we want to on this roll of film, and we're ready to take the film out. The film has been fully exposed. To do that, we're going to be rewinding the film with the rewind lever here to bring it back into the canister. But before we start to rewind, very important that you press in the essentially the rewind button, which acts like a clutch. This is going to disengage the advance mechanism on the camera. Okay, so I'm going to push that in. As soon as I've pushed that in, now I am ready to begin rewinding the film back into the film canister. And you want to rewind until typically you'll feel the rewind lever tighten up a little bit as the film disengages from where we threaded it through on the take-up spool. It will get a little bit tighter as it disengages, and then it will seem to get quite loose as the film just simply rolls back around in the canister. And if I'm confident that I'm ready to open it up, I can simply pull up on the rewind lever again, and we'll see that the film is neatly tucked back inside the canister, and it would be ready now for processing. Okay? So, excuse me, that's how we would work it with a fully manual camera like this. Now I've got two cameras here as well that are more automated. They have a motor drive inside. I'm going to open up this canister. This is something you would never do on your own without completely ruining your film, but I simply need to pretend as though we have a new fresh roll of film here. With these motorized advanced cameras, the loading procedure is a little bit simpler. This camera happens to have a release button on the side here that we can simply open up, pull down on it, spring load, and the back opens up. And with these cameras here, all we really need to do is put the canister in, again, taking caution not to touch the shutter mechanism. And on this camera, all we need to do is simply stretch the film across. Okay, you can see a yellow or orange indicator here showing us where the leader of the film needs to be. And on this camera here, we just want to make sure that the film is flat, that it's pulled across, and all we need to do is close the back, and that will engage the motor drive on the camera, and the camera will automatically advance the film to the first frame. That's it. The camera's loaded. If we saw an error message on the display, if it said anything other than the number 1 on the display, then we would know that the film may not have loaded correctly. We could open it up and try it again. And on these cameras, I would continue then to take pictures with the camera. And when I had finished taking all of the pictures on the camera and I'm ready to rewind the film, I can rewind the film. Quite typically with these cameras, when it gets to the very end of the film, it will rewind on its own. Or I have the option here of rewinding this camera manually as well. And this is a little bit different on different cameras, but I simultaneously need to press this rewind button and that one. It's a bit of a safety mechanism. And as soon as I do that, the camera will begin to rewind. We're lucky. There we go. And we can hear it rewinding. And if I open up the back now, we see that the film again is wound back inside the canister, and the film is ready for processing. I'll show you on one more camera. Again, I'm going to open this canister up and reset the film. Not something you ever want to do with your own roll of film, because you will damage it. This camera is slightly different, and it's actually a design feature that I really like about a lot of Canon cameras. What it's going to do here is, quite typically on most cameras, the film, the fresh film is pulled out, it's fed into the take-up spool, and as you take pictures, more film is taken out of the canister. These Canon cameras actually work a little bit opposite. I'm going to put the film into the chamber, pull it across toward the take-up spool, and when I close the back, what's going to happen here is we're going to hear the motor drive run for quite some time, and we'll notice the counter is counting here. What's happening here is all of the film is being currently taken over into the take-up spool. So all of the film has now been emptied out of the chamber, and it's in the take-up spool. The counter is telling me number 17. That's not indicating that I'm on the 17th frame. That's indicating that I have 17 pictures left. What this camera is going to do is, as I take pictures, it will rewind the frame one at a time back into the film canister. Now there's a real advantage to that, because if I happen to open up the back of the camera incidentally or by accident, that would mean that my unexposed film over here would be damaged, but any of the pictures that I've already taken are already safely inside the canister and they wouldn't be ruined. So it's a nice design feature. I also like to know at a glance how many pictures I have left. Okay? Irregardless of how long my film is, I know I have 17 frames left. On this camera, if I wanted to rewind the film manually, I would have to turn the mode dial to rewind, and as well press the rewind button here. And now we can see the counter counting down as the film is wound back into the canister until it reaches 0. You'll notice the motor drive went a little bit higher pitch at the end as the film disengaged. And when I open it up, now the film is once again ready to take out and process. And that is how you load a manual camera.